Phone lines and talk to Mike Tannenbaum. He's calling the Niners-Jaguars game for ESPN Radio. He's a current ESPN insider and the former general manager of the New York Jets. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Good afternoon, guys. How are you?
Good. Let me just let you in on something. Kyle Shanahan just met with the media, and he announced that their defensive coordinator, Steve Wilks, is going to go down to the sidelines. He's been up in the booth for the first 8 games. Now he's going to the sidelines. Why would a team make a change like that in the middle of the year?
You know, we've actually seen that like a little bit lately. This isn't probably the first nor the last of that happening. Brian Schottenheimer's on the sidelines now for the Cowboys. We see Matt Canada, the coordinator for the Steelers, go from the box down. So, I've been around coaches for 20 years. Sometimes they just feel like it's a different feel, different vibe. If you ask Dan Quinn, he loves calling the game from the box because he could see it better. So it may just be a personal preference for Coach Wilks.
Mike, I catch you on TV. I'm a big fan of your work, so I know you bring it, and I got to ask you this question. The Trey Lance draft pick was a debacle, but here comes Brock Purdy, and I was like, my God, this guy's not making any mistakes. But, Mike, can you just share with us what you've seen the last 3 weeks, and are you concerned about Brock Purdy moving forward or nothing to see here?
Yeah, look, so my daughter goes to Michigan, so I'd rather talk about Jake Moody and how good he is.
You missed that biggie against Cleveland.
And that's why I bring it up, guys. If he makes that kick against Cleveland, we're talking about. So I give the Yorks a ton of credit. Like, we know the swing and miss on Trey Lance, but they gave Kyle and John a well-deserved extension, and they've got a lot more right than wrong. And I think Purdy is a guy that is a limited athlete with good, not great arm strength, and he's a really good quarterback in that system. And I know we're talking about 3 in a row, but really, the Cleveland game, these are all a handful of plays that I think would have been different. I think his experience is consequential. The way he processes information, anticipates. I'm a big fan of his, and I think he'll be just fine.
Mike Tannenbaum joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's calling the Niners-Jaguars game for ESPN Radio on Sunday. Former New York Jets general manager. I want to touch on that as a former general manager. So whether they stumbled on it or not, people are going to say I'm obsessed with this, and maybe I am. But the fact that the 49ers are able to have a quarterback under contract for $800,000 it gives them a salary cap advantage that many other teams don't have. They found somebody like that. Is there any way that can become almost a strategy of an organization to find quarterbacks that they might not have to pay $40 or $50 million so that they can surround a guy like Purdy with so many weapons?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. Guys, if you have an A, clearly you pay an A, right? A Herbert, a Mahomes, a Jalen, clearly you pay those guys. But, if you look at the Giants, for example, if you just be honest and watch the tape, Tyrod Taylor was outplaying Daniel Jones, and then you factor in the $35 million difference in salaries, and it's a no-brainer. And, you look at situations like, are you better off with a Geno Smith than a Kirk Cousins, for example? And I think more and more teams are going to look at that because when you look at what's going around the league and like Jaron Hall playing, for example, and we're only halfway done, we're going to see more quarterbacks get hurt. And I think there's a lot to be said that, are you better off paying 2 Bs than trying to get an A, not only for the depth of the team, but just for the depth of the quarterback position?
Mike, let me ask you about Christian McCaffrey. He's been a godsend since he's been in town, but he has fumbles in 3 of his last 4 games. Some people out here talked about is he being overused. You know what goes on in the locker room. Is that laughable that I bring up is Christian McCaffrey? Maybe he's nursing an oblique injury and all of a sudden the ball's coming out because they have nothing behind them in regard to Mitchell or Mason. Kyle doesn't use them. Is that a concern for you moving forward?
That's where you have to say to, Christian, hey, we got to have great communication. We know you're a world-class competitor, but the object of the exercise is for us to crush it in the playoffs. So let's see, let's make sure that our goals are aligned, and maybe we scale back, 5 or 7 touches per game, for the rest of the regular season.
Mike Tannenbaum joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's going to be on the call for the 49ers-Jaguars game for ESPN Radio. I don't know how well you know Kyle Shanahan, but he seems to me like a pretty confident head coach. Do you think he believes he can make an average quarterback a very good quarterback and one that could win a Super Bowl for his team?
Absolutely. I mean, look, Kyle's a great coach. It's a great system. John Lynch has done a great job. You just look at the playmakers, and look, they have to. So their offensive line is not great, but most teams aren't. And when you get into the later rounds, like obviously they got overwhelmed up front against Philly last year, which a lot of teams will. But I think Kyle's of the mindset we could scheme them up, we can get rid of the ball. We could get these long handoffs to the Deebo Samuels of the world, and we're built to win right now because we have incredible pieces around what, in my opinion, is a very good, albeit not great quarterback, but certainly enough to win with.
Mike, can you just talk to us about how John Lynch continues to fleece teams? I mean, last year it was McCaffrey with, his trade. This year it's Chase Young. Like, what goes into a deal like that, and how does he keep pulling it off?
Yeah, John is remarkable. He still owes me a steak dinner, and with interest, I could be able to retire. He's Herman Edwards, like he's the godfather. Like John's the godfather of Herm's son, and he gets cut. Herm's the head coach of the Jets. We take him out to this elaborate steak dinner in Long Island to sign him at the Jets, which Herm's like, we don't even have to take him out. He's going to sign with us. Next day, he's a New England Patriot, and like 20 years later, I still haven't been paid back for the tab for the steakhouse.
Wow.
So, a game of inches. I just think Dallas, because their defense could be really be there at the end. Deron Bland has really stepped up to replace Trayvon Diggs, and Philly, only has one loss, but I don't know. There just seems like they're not the same team right now. I don't know if it's Jalen Hurts' knee or not, but I think they'll be obviously part of the conversation. And Detroit, I did their game against Baltimore. They look terrible, but obviously, they're having a good year. But I put San Francisco, Dallas, and Philly, shake it up, and I can see any of those 3 teams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, man, I'd love that, Mike. Let me, before we let you go here, the Niners come out of their bye week to take on another team that's done the same, and that's in Jacksonville. I mean, they've won 5 in a row. How legit are they, and how do you see this matchup? Because I'm telling Kyle and company and the people out here, the Niners can't lose 4 in a row, can they?
I don't think so. Look, it's going to be an interesting game. Both teams have strengths and weaknesses. Jacksonville has struggled in the red zone. Their secondary isn't great, but they can rush the passer. So I think this is a game that, if Brock could be protected, I think they're going to be in good shape. And then I think Jacksonville's going to have trouble scoring. And look, like everybody else, I can't wait to see Chase Young out there. I mean, it's who do you slide protection to, right? And then you have Eric Armstead and, oh, by the way, Javon Hargrave, who is maybe the best interior pass rusher from a year ago. So it's remarkable how good and how deep they are. And I think it should be a really good game. My sense, guys, is just looking at it right now, I think it's going to be on the lower scoring end.
Hey, Mike, thank you so much for joining us, man. Great stuff. Have a great call on Sunday. It's we're looking forward to it out here in the Bay.
We'll try to get you that steak and relay that message.
Yeah, could you please? Yeah. And tell them with interest, it's probably a steak now and an Italian dinner.
We'll do that. We'll do that. A little surf and turf action.
Look at you.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. That's Mike Tannenbaum. He's calling the 49ers-Jaguars game for ESPN Radio, former Jets general manager.